Samuel.
All right. My name is Kimberly Sherlock Mara Blake. I am the Executive Director of the Jamaica Association for the Deaf. The JAD is just over 80 years old. We started back in 1938, and we are a full-service support agency for the deaf. And we have been working along with the general public to provide some support services as well. So the JAD has 4 divisions: our administrative division that handles our basic administration of an NGO, HR and accounts and so on. And then we have our business division that supports our social enterprises, our hearing assessment center, where persons can come in, general public can come in and test their hearing just in case they feel that there might be some need, or if it's medically required or recommended that they get testing for their hearing. We also provide hearing aids and earplugs to support hearing health and prevention of hearing loss where possible. Our education and training division is quite a large division supporting our 7 schools and units across the island. We have a school in Brownstown, which is the St. Christopher School for the Deaf. We have our Kingston campuses, the Danny Williams Primary School and the Lister McGilby High School. We also have a unit at the Excelsior Primary School, a unit in Maypen, and a unit in Port Antonio. We work along with other partners who provide deaf education, including the Caribbean Christian Centers for the Deaf and the Jamaica Christian School for the Deaf. And our aim is to ensure that deaf education is provided to students who require that specialized education placement to ensure that they can attain the educational goals that are provided to our students in mainstream. Our social services division is where quite a bit of our community activities happen. It's where we do family engagement and individual assessment and support for school to work transition and employment, and of course the critical work of advocacy for communication access and integration of the deaf in the wider society.
Okay, what are some of the struggles that you see deaf persons face in Jamaica, and what are the strategies you're going to employ to, help them to overcome those difficulties?
Well, one main challenge is communication access. We generally, as hearing persons, take for granted the importance or the value of being able to access information. A prime example is in the case of a hospital visit or a doctor's visit, being able to clearly understand exactly what the doctor is saying to you, and being able to clearly articulate to the doctor what you're feeling and how you've been recovering or coping with a particular situation. There's that communication access component looks at a number of different bits and pieces. It's the policy to ensure that the provision is provided to the deaf. It's also the attitude, the issue of whether or not persons are prepared and open to having that additional support person in the room. Because even with provisions and even with policy, if it is that someone has a very negative attitude to the deaf and assumes that deaf persons are dumb and therefore not able to express themselves, which is not in fact true, then it means that it's going to be more challenging for a deaf person to be able to use the support that's provided to them and actually have access to the support of an interpreter.
So how do you plan to integrate sign languages into our wider society? Because a lot of persons in Jamaica see the language as something foreign. Most of us have not even had an encounter with a deaf person. And we have been in Jamaica 40, 50 years.
Oh, yeah. It can be challenging, but one of the things that we're applying as strategies, one is communication access advocacy. So we're advocating as best as possible in small spaces and in large spaces. Of course, public education can be a very expensive venture, so we're doing it in a way that is cost effective and is something that we can manage as an organization with or without a grant. Of course, with a financial grant, it makes it a lot easier to put ads out and to get things out on TV and radio and all these places. But without that additional funding, meetings and engaging in civil society opportunities and different interagency discussions on addressing certain problems like the justice system and our care and protection of our children are areas and ways that we begin to get persons to think about, wow, how am I providing this access? If I am not providing it, what can I do instead to provide it?
Have you considered working with the Teachers College
That's actually an area that we've been going into. We've been engaging with the Teachers Colleges. We work along with the Ministry of Education in the management of our schools, and now we've been engaging the Teachers Colleges to see how best we can engage teachers to be trained or at least exposed to disabilities so that they're better able to manage and support a deaf person, whether it is a child in their classroom who is hard of hearing or a parent who has a hearing child who's enrolled in the school that they work. We've also been working with nurses and doctors and, so it's health, legal, and education that we've been really working at now, because those are critical areas, support areas that are usually targeted or supported by the deaf community.
Have you approached like the Minister of Education, the Early Childhood Commission to integrate the sign languages into our early children curriculum? Have you considered that?
We've started looking at it, but one of the things that we're being very careful of is to ensure that we are meeting the critical areas that impact the community themselves first. So it's ensuring that while we are working at getting a preventative or reactive response to some things, we have a proactive response to others. Okay. So our proactive response is getting persons in training to be prepared to engage. And in that case, it would mean beginning to look at curriculum changes in our schools, so that not just sign language training, but just disability awareness and deaf awareness is a part of our general curriculum for students. Simultaneously, we're working to ensure that the critical service agents are prepared to support a deaf person. And oftentimes when we begin to look at preparing our critical service agents, we're able to go back over to the education side, because people say, if I had learned this when I was training to be in this space, I would be in a better position. So it's a two-pronged approach that we're taking. Taking a great look at how much more we'll be able to get out of either one of the situations. But we have been working more with the teachers and the healthcare providers and the justice system, because those tend to be education being a critical service for persons throughout the education system, and health and justice being two areas that are life and death, or can change the life of somebody if you're not adequately addressed. But then on the side of early childhood, beginning to look at those proactive strategies that can ensure that from a very early stage, the attitudinal barriers that exist with people believing that persons with disabilities and persons who are deaf can be changed.
Okay, what are your short-term goals?
Well, right now as an organization, a short-term goal is a greater output from our schools so that we can have more students in university. A short-term goal is the increasing the number of interpreters or persons engaged as interpreters across the island. Another short-term goal for us is having more deaf persons employed. And so these are both short-term and long-term goals. Why? Because we've been doing some advocacy to make them happen. Mm-hmm. So in the short term, we want to increase the number, and of course in the long term, we want to increase it by a
And the long term, just to give us a synopsis of the long-term goal.
Well, JD's vision is a Jamaica in which deaf persons can be active nation builders. And to be an active nation builder, it usually requires a foundation of education, so you can understand what are my rights and my responsibilities. I can actively participate as a member of the workforce, so that I can be contributing my time and talent to an economy that can then turn back and be a supportive space for me. So it's very much in line with what Vision 2030 speaks to, and very much in line to what Sustainable Development Goals speak to, because in order for us to be a place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business, we have to be in a space where all members of the population can feel like they are a part of the nation as builders. And at the end of the day, we work very strongly towards the overall motto of out of many one people, because the motto doesn't say out of many one, disability not included. Okay. And so for us, our long-term goal is always working towards ensuring that persons can be active nation builders, a part of the whole, involved in policy discussions and planning discussions to make a difference in the country based on their own experiences and their feedback.
I know there's a law that states that every organization should employ like a 3 or 5% disabled person to their workforce. I'm not seeing that. What are you doing to enforce this?
That's a law that's, with the Disability Act now coming on stream, you'll begin to see some changes. I think one of the challenges that we have is disability has been fragmented into so many different policies that it's not being as policed as we would like it to be. So with the new Disability Act, we're expecting a change in how disability is supported. The Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities will become a body corporate that is able to manage a disability rights tribunal where issues of that nature will be put on the table for discussion and for persons to be, for repercussions to be had if it is that they're not meeting that standard. And so I'm being very cautious about how we as an organization handle it, because we know that that issue is something that as a sector, it has to be handled. And in ensuring that it is handled in the best way to meet the needs of the population, because expecting a 5% of your population, of your employee population being persons with disabilities doesn't speak to whether or not those persons are all going to be at the lowest level. And one of the fears that we have is that if we're not careful, persons will just begin employing persons with disabilities at the lowest level of their staff, which is not what we want. Ensuring that the Disability Act and the regulations speak to a duly and appropriate level of employment based on qualifications and experience is where we want to ensure that it's nicely outlined so that you don't have any gray areas, and we're in a position where with the Disability Rights Tribunal we're able to really put in the repercussions if someone does not follow that.
Do you believe that there should be some taxable funding for disabled community, meaning like we have statutory taxes, NHE tax? Do you think that there should be a tax towards helping the disabled community?
Well, I don't think we necessarily need a tax right now. If we're to look at the community of persons who are deaf, we pay a telephone tax, and generally the general public pays a telephone tax, and it's not necessarily, we joke and call it a telephone tax, but if it's considered a communication tax, then that tax, the funds from that tax can go back into the provision of communication access for the deaf. So it may not necessarily need to have a disability tax. What it needs is for us to put in the scope of our taxes that already exist the provisions for access, because physical access can be achieved if we go according to the building code, which speaks to accessible properties. General disability access in communication through the communication or telephone tax. And so there are different ways that we can achieve it without adding an additional tax, particularly because we are very conscious about the idea of adding a tax called disability tax and then it causing its own challenges with people and their personal attitudinal emotions and perspectives beginning to get muddled into it and causing a bit of a problem with that.
We thank you so much, I know that you're doing a fantastic job in bringing awareness to our deaf community, and I pray your continued success for your organization. I will look forward to subsequent interview. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.